Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purananamalayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Sri Medha Dakshina Murti Swamine Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandhadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedais Sankapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Dadgatena Manasam Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantanna Vidhusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Namaste once again, everyone. So just a small request, please mark your attendance before we start the class.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste, namaste everyone.
Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. So in the last class, what we were seeing the 38th and 39th slokas of the first chapter. And Arjuna said that Duryodhana and his people, they are lobopahata chetasaha. Chetasaha, that means their intellects. They are upahataha, overpowered by lobaha, greed. And that is why they are unable to see the evil consequences of this war. So, Arjuna is trying to justify all Duryodhana's akramams, especially when he took away the kingdom from the Pandavas through deceit. He says that basically Duryodhana and these people are all good people only, but it was their greed which was responsible for their actions. See how nicely, this is all, we can see this in our own lives, on day-to-day basis. How we try to justify the actions of some people. No, that fellow is a very nice person. He was angry at that time, and when somebody is angry, he is bound to do so many things. So it is not he who did it. It is Kamo Karshit, Manyura Karshit. That is why we chanted Kamo Karshit, Manyura Karshit Japam. It was his raga which made him do it. It was his krodha which made him do it. That person is a nice person. This is how we try to justify people's actions and all that, especially adharmic actions. And greed especially is capable of anything. You may be highly educated, but greed actually overpowers all education. It robs away one's understanding of the right and wrong, and also one's capacity to interpret them. And what happens is, greed on the part of an educated person, it helps that person to justify the greed with cogent arguments. That is the beauty. And here Arjuna is very well educated. So here too, this Dhartarashtra's and that is Arjuna and even Duryodhana's in the story, Mahabharata story, they use every argument they know to justify what they wanted to do, and that is all because of greed. And Arjuna says it was greed which drove them, and that is why they could not see the destruction that they were going to bring about now because of this war. So he says, Ete na pashyanti, they do not see. What they do not see? The dosha, the defect of kulakshaya kritam. Kulakshaya kritam means the destruction of the families. That is the defect caused by the destruction of the families. This Duryodhana and company, they are not able to see because of their greed. So according to Arjuna, the first evil consequence of this war is the destruction of many families. Because we know when a male is in the traditional society, of course, today this may not hold true. In the traditional society, when a male is destroyed, and when the male alone was the head of the family and he was the only breadwinner, so what happens is, when the male is destroyed, then there is a risk of the family itself being destroyed. And Arjuna says, not only that, there is another evil involved, which is Mitra Droham, betrayal of one's friends, which he says is a patakam. Patakam means a papa, a sin. And Arjuna says, Duryodhana can't see, because of this greed, he can't see this papa that he would incur by doing this cheating or droha, deceiving his own friends. Here, of course, the word mitra, we have to take a broader meaning to include one's cousins, relatives, as well as friends. Okay. Puja Swamiji actually, points out an example of this droha. He says, you ask a friend whom you trust to keep some money for you. And when you claim it back, if he or she says, what money? When did you give me? That is betrayal. It's like, the Christians, they talk, the Bible talks about the betrayal of Christ by Judas, another example of droha. So what Arjuna says is that many of them who have assembled here to fight are not only our relations, but they are also our close friends. And it is the job of a friend to assist another friend, to help a friend. A friend in need is a friend indeed. So we are supposed to protect the friends. But instead of protecting the friends who are all assembled here, and friends, as I said, includes relations and all cousins, everybody, Arjuna says we are going to destroy them. And this is a Mahapapa. Even generally harming anyone is a papa. But harming a friend who has trusted me is ingratitude, and it is a Mahapapam. The point Arjuna wants to highlight to Krishna is that all these consequences, this Kulakshaya Kritam, Mitra Droham, all these consequences, these Duryodhanas, they are not seeing, but I am able to see these consequences. Thank God, at least now we have got our buddhi before we started the battle. Otherwise, I would have done a great, wrong by fighting this battle. So that is why, since our vision is very clear now, we should not fight this battle. We should withdraw from this war. So Krishna, let us go back. And he said, why should we have, this is all implication of Arjuna. This is not there in the slokas. Arjuna's point is why we should have all this false ego and all, okay, I'll fight this war and all. Some people may criticize us. It's okay. Let them criticize. How does it matter? It is a far less, sorrow to bear than the grief which will come by killing all these people. So let the world say anything. Let us withdraw from the war. So he says, Hey Janardana. He is pleading to Krishna because Krishna is the one who has to drive the chariot, isn't it? So if they have to withdraw from the war also, Arjuna has to depend upon Krishna to drive the chariot away. So indirectly, he is actually, trying to enlist Krishna's support. And Krishna is sitting like Brahman, neither ready to cooperate, nor he is countering him or trying to reject what all Arjuna is saying. Because if Krishna has to counter or reject whatever Arjuna is saying, he has to give his own arguments. And if Krishna has to give his arguments, Arjuna should be in a position to receive them also. In his current emotional condition, he should be able to or capable of receiving the arguments. But Krishna knows that Arjuna is not at all in any kind of situation where whatever Krishna says, it is going to fall on deaf ears only. And this holds a very big lesson for us. This Krishna's keeping quiet is a big lesson for us. Because we find that many people come to us and give us unsolicited advice, without verifying whether the other person is in an appropriate state of mind to receive such advice or not. We will just, a person may be suffering from some pain and he will be saying that, I have been having this knee pain which is killing me for so many months and all. That is all he has said. His whole mind is occupied with this knee pain. We will suddenly start giving him all sorts of medication for knee pain. He is not in a position to receive any of the things that you are saying to him. But many of us have this habit of giving this unsolicited advice. He has not asked you, what should I do about this knee pain? But still, we will volunteer to give advice. Yeah. So, unless the other person is in receptive mood, there is no use of talking, there is no use of giving any kind of advice. And Swami Paramathananda says that this non-receptive person is called Vanarodhanam. It is like crying in the forest. You may cry, but there will be no one to witness it. And if we just reflect, half the time in our families, we are talking to people who are not at all interested in listening to us. Especially when the children are grown up and they are leading their own lives, and we as parents, we want to give them unsolicited advice. Don't do this, don't do that, do it this way, do it that way. And we will justify, as parents, we have to tell all these things, we will justify. But they are not in a receptive mood at all. So it is just like talking to a wall. We will end up with, and what will happen? It will increase our shoka, our grief. That saying, with so much love, I brought up these children. Today they are not listening to me. That is what our complaint will be. But Krishna is very intelligent. Even though he has to say a lot of things, it's not that Krishna doesn't have any arguments or anything to say, which he will say in the second chapter. He will tell Arjuna point blank on his face so many things, which Arjuna may even not want to hear rather those things. But Krishna is not going to keep quiet. But he does not say anything now because he knows that Arjuna is totally overwhelmed by this shoka and moha. His mind is closed. And Krishna also knows that Arjuna has not finished his outpouring. Unlike many of us, Krishna does not want to interrupt Arjuna. He says, let him talk, let him come out with everything. As they say, let him bare his chest, pour out everything that is there in his heart. So therefore, Krishna is listening quietly, and Arjuna continues his argument, which he is going to build up in the following slokas. And this will go on, all very interesting slokas till up to 46th sloka. So then the chapter will close rather. So now Arjuna is going to elaborate on the evil consequences of kulakshayam, destruction of families. In the previous sloka, he talked two things, kulakshayam and mitra droham. Now he is going to elaborate on kulakshayam, what this destruction of family, by that he means. Okay. So we will read the 40th sloka. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanatana dharme nashte kulam krishnam adharmo bhibhavatyuta. So Anvaya is kulakshaye sanatanaha kuladharmaha pranashyanti uta dharme nashte adharmaha krishnam kulam abhibhavati. This is what Arjuna is saying. The consequences of kulakshaya, destruction of the families. He has already said that once the head of the family is destroyed, there is a high risk of the family itself being destroyed. Now that he is now trying to explain what did he mean by that. So we'll see the word meanings. Kulakshaye, when the families are destroyed. Sanatanaha, the long-standing. Sanatanaha means long-standing or eternal. Kuladharmaha. Here kuladharmaha we have to take is a family traditions. Okay. Pranashyanti, perish. Uta, indeed. Dharme nashte, when the family traditions are lost. Adharmaha, that is unrighteousness. Krishnam kulam, the entire family, abhibhavati, overtakes or overpowers. So what he wants to say is, when the families are destroyed, the long-standing family traditions will perish. And when the family traditions are lost, adharma indeed overtakes or overpowers the entire family. So in the previous verse, Arjuna had pointed out that Duryodhana and his people they are not seeing the defect in the destruction of the families because of their greed. They are unable to appreciate the disastrous consequences this could lead to, because once the families are destroyed, there would be no one to establish dharma, adharma. Therefore, in one way, Arjuna doesn't seem to be in agreement with the argument that dharma was to be protected at any cost, and even at the cost of destroying one's relatives. That is what his implication was. So, if by destroying all the people, it is going to lead to adharma, the dharma lies in not killing those people. That is his convoluted argument that he comes up with. Where? In the battlefield. Not everywhere. This is not a debate going on in the court of law. In the battlefield, he is saying this, right? Where he has come to actually fight those people. And in this verse, he further reveals and further substantiates that argument. So he is explaining the consequences of this family destruction. When there are no healthy families in the society, either there is no family life or where there are only broken families. When I say healthy family means two consequences. When there is no family life, but people don't get married at all and they don't set up families at all. Or there are broken families. They get married, but the families are broken. What the consequences will be in the society? What Arjuna wants to say here is, without a family life, dharma cannot grow. Religion can never grow. Culture can never grow, and spirituality is never possible. Therefore, whether it is dharma, whether it is culture, whether it is religion, or whether it is spirituality, all these things can grow in a society only where there are stable, surviving, long-lasting families. This is the point Arjuna wants to make. That is why he says that we should not do anything which will lead to destruction of the families. Actually, in India, traditionally speaking, the families are so strong. Somebody gets married for life, then get children, bring bring up the children, give them good life, whatever is possible within their means. And whatever happens, mostly the husband and wife will always stay together. So because of that, probably we have not understood the importance of families. And this continues to be strong even today, relatively very strong as compared to many other societies. And since we never had this problem of separation, broken family and all, we have never appreciated the importance of the family. We have always taken it for granted. And if you see in the West, what is happening? The broken families are growing. Even in India, one can say that the things are slowly changing, especially in the urban areas and metropolitan areas, in the metros and all that. And we are now started to realize the adverse consequences of this breaking up of families only now. We started realizing that. In the West, of course, a lot of research has been going on for quite some time, analyzing a lot of sociological problems, which is a consequence of broken families, like, youth problems, crimes, drugs. All those things are now being analyzed rather in the West. And after analysis and, lot of statistical studies and all, they have come to recognize that 90% of the problems in youth is only because they do not have a stable family background. Of course, that does not mean that if you have a stable family background, you will not take to all these ways. The converse is not true, but the incidence will be very, very less. That will be an exception. In the case of stable families, the rule will be children belonging to stable families will turn out to be good citizens of the country. So, and that is why, our scriptures, they have always given a lot of importance to healthy family life. It is just like an industry. If an industry should grow very well, we know that it requires an ideal infrastructure. A proper structure is required, different departments, different heads. They are all functioning in harmony. There is an understanding. People work as a team. Only when such a wonderful setup is there, the material growth of an industry is possible. Otherwise, if everybody, one general manager says something, another general manager does exactly the opposite of what is being said there. If there's a lot of conflicts in the leadership of the industry, of that particular unit, it will never grow rather. It will, there'll be total what we can call, industry kshayam will happen, like kulakshayam. So similarly, even in the case of a nation, if a nation should progress, develop and grow, we need a stable government. And we have realized in India, we have realized this only in the last 10 years. If you look before that, what was happening last probably 2-3 decades, no government at the center was stable. It was all, coalition governments. There was lack of cohesion and harmony. Everybody, trying to drive their own personal agendas. Most of the time, the government was struggling only for its survival. Even the Prime Minister, erstwhile Prime Minister said, these are compulsions of a coalition government. He openly admitted in the parliament that we can't do anything. We are not able to do anything progressive, anything productive or development agenda because of the coalition government. This was the, what I can say, confession of a Prime Minister. So most of the time, the governments were, struggling for their survival. Everybody was trying to protect their seats. And nobody could even think of progress of the nation and all that kind of thing. So just as a good infrastructure is required for industrial growth, a good stable government is required for national growth, a stable family is required for cultural growth, dharmic growth, religious growth, and spiritual growth. And especially spiritual growth and such value just and culture and all that put together is what we call dharma or kula dharma. So when important members of the family are destroyed, everything done by that particular family will also be destroyed. And this is because dharma cannot be protected unless the dharmi, the one who follows the dharma, is protected. The dharma cannot be protected by preserving dharma in a time capsule. Dharma is not like what they call that historical scrolls, what they call the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that. That can be stored for posterity so that even if the whole civilization is destroyed, a future generation can find those scrolls and know the history. Dharma cannot be preserved by writing it up and keeping it somewhere. Even though certain dharmas like Samanya Dharma and all that can be done, but when it comes to Kula Dharma, it's not possible to write down all those things and pass it on to future generation. Even though given the today's communication infrastructure, probably it may be possible, provided the head of the family today knows what their Kula Dharmas are. Many of them would not even know what their Kula Dharma are, because nobody has told them from the previous generation. And they have all become mixed up. Some family traditions, some social traditions, all that have got mixed up. So what the Kula Dharma is, if you ask anybody, what is your Kula Dharma? Forget Kula Dharma. Many of us do not even know who is the Kula Daivam. So these things we have come to such a pause rather. Anyhow, so Dharma cannot be preserved by writing it up or keeping it somewhere. Dharma can be sustained only by practicing Dharma. That we must understand. Therefore, only when the person following the Dharma is protected, the Dharma itself can be protected. So, Dharma cannot be retained if the Dharmi who follows the Dharma is destroyed. And what is this Dharma? This is Sanatana, flowing from time immemorial, or you can say beginningless times. We don't even know when these Kula Dharmas started rather. But it got passed down from one generation to the next generation. It's perennial rather. This family dharma is perennial. And essentially what it means, in a family, but every family have got their own peculiarities, their own belief systems, their own precedents, based upon which this Kula Dharma is adopted by the family. Basically, that comprises of do's and don'ts, what is to be done and what is not to be done, that runs in the family. And all that will be destroyed if the family is destroyed. And when dharma is destroyed, those who survived because they were not in the battlefield, what will happen? They will succumb to adharma. And this was Arjuna's argument. And which on the face of it is a very convincing argument. That is what will happen rather if there is nobody to protect the dharma will finish and adharma only will come up rather. It will only be prevalent. This is what Arjuna says. So what he says is, without a stable family, Kula Dharma will perish, and therefore he says, Kulakshaye pranashyanti. So when the families are destroyed, the dharmas are destroyed, Kula Dharma, that is the cultural values, ethical values, religious values, spiritual values, which have all been coming down from Anadi Veda Parampara, they will all be destroyed. So dharme nashte, when the dharma are destroyed as a consequence of the destruction of the families, the immediate result will be adharma, adharmaha abhibhavati. That means what? Adharma means a life given to artha and kama. That kind of a life will flourish rather. Only importance is material wealth, no religious, cultural, spiritual component. Honestly speaking, what Arjuna has said 5,000, 6,000 years ago, today we are witnessing all that in our family. Even traditional orthodox families, we are witnessing all these things. So life given only to material values will flourish. Money will become the most important thing in life. Pleasure, that will become most important thing in life. For the sake of money and pleasure, all values will be given. And such materialistic life that is only focusing on materialism is called adharma. And such a life, adharmic life, will overpower all values. This is Arjuna's point. And so now he continues, he now further elaborates the consequences of the destruction of the families. He has said, adharmaha abhibhavati. Now he continues, adharma abhibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyaha strishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankaraha. So Anvaya is, hey Krishna, adharma abhibhavat kulastriyah pradushyanti. He varshneya strishu dushtasu varna sankaraha jayate. That is what he says. Hey Krishna, O Krishna, adharma abhibhavat, because of the prevalence of this adharma, overpowering nature of this adharma, kulastriyaha, the women of the family, pradushyanti, they become corrupt, they take to undesirable ways. He Varshneya, O Krishna, strishu dushtasu, when women become corrupt, Varna Sankaraha. Varna Sankaraha, I'll explain this it's a very important word here. But here we can take the intermixture of castes. Jayate, there arises, will arise. So what he says is, oh Krishna, because of the prevalence of adharma, the women in the family become corrupt. Then he says, oh Varshneya, again Krishna's name only. When women become corrupt, intermixture of castes take place. So step by step he is presenting his argument. First he says that there will be destruction of families. Now destruction of families will lead to what? When there is nobody to protect the women, they will be forced to take to wrong ways. And when that happens, they may even get, married to other castes, other families. So there will be intermixture of castes. Here what we should understand is there will be intermixture of kula dharmas. And there will be confusion. Total confusion will arise because of intermixture of the family traditions. See, when his thinking capacity, Arjuna, what should be doing here? He must be thinking about the strategies of winning this war. As a warrior, as a Kshatriya, his Kshatriya dharma was to protect the dharma, which has been overridden, which has been trampled by Duryodhana and company. And faced with such a huge army of Duryodhanas, 11 Akshonis. We have seen that, right? 11 Akshonis, huge army with so many Maharathis in the army. Arjuna should be actually thinking how to strategize to win this war. Instead, see what this attachment, raga and moha has brought him to. How he is presenting the situation for justifying his withdrawal from the battle. But many of us will feel what Arjuna says is logical. It makes a lot of sense. It is true. And some ladies will even scoff at the statement which he says, Strishu Dushtasu, when women become corrupt. In fact, when I was reading this sloka, some ladies, especially in our Gurukula, they were sort of up in arms. What do you mean by women becoming corrupt and all that kind of thing? How can Arjuna say such things, or how can Bhagavad Gita say such things and all that? But we have to understand the whole context rather. That's why, when we come to Bhagavad Gita, when we are spiritual, we must be very objective in our approach. If we are carrying the same raga, dvesha, moha with us, we will never understand all these things. Our reaction will be how we can say this and all that kind of thing. So our objective approach to the scriptures is very much required, and spirituality, Vedanta is all about looking at everything objectively, keeping all your emotions aside. Look at it objectively with your intellect, apply your intellect, mind, analyzing capacity, and then understand what is being said. That is important. So therefore, we need to understand the implication of what Arjuna says from different perspectives, rather, because the reactions could be mixed. In fact, why could be? They are mixed, when especially this sloka brings in a lot of mixed reactions. So we need to go a little bit deep and understand what Arjuna wants to convey, through these slokas. So in the earlier slokas, he said that this war will result in kulakshaya, destruction of families, because all male members who have assembled to fight on both the sides will be killed. Therefore, there will be no male members left for protecting the families. And then he said, when this happens, that is when the kulakshayam happens, Kula dharmaha pranashyanti. The long-standing family traditions will perish. And in this sloka, he explains how these long-standing family traditions will perish. So to begin with, he says there will be no male members to protect the women in the family. And because of that, kulastriya pradushyanti, the women in the family will be given to improper ways. They will tend to become corrupt, which will lead to varna sankaraha, the intermixture of castes. We can take intermixture of family traditions also. So the women will no longer be able to uphold the family values and pass it on to the next generation. Because in the traditional society, as I said, we have to understand this entire thing from the perspective or the standpoint of a traditional society. We should not try to compare what is happening today in terms of women being independent. They have economically also they are quite independent. And so there are single parent, women who are single parents, and they are able to very well bring up their children and all that kind of a thing. This was a case when in the Vedic period, the male member was the only, breadwinner in the family. And when the male member died or, for whatever reason, whether in a war or otherwise, the women, they were left in a helpless situation. But I don't know, many of the old movies, that one movie was there, many of you might have seen Mother India. In that Mother India, that Nargis, the lady's husband runs away from the home. And they've got a small, plot of land, a lot of debts and all that kind of thing. So she goes to the village, that money lender. And then he makes a lot of evil proposals to her. This, there are so many movies like that. So this typical kind of a thing, traditional families, this was the problem with women. Some women were very strong, so they could actually protect, they could bear all the problems. Of course, this Mother India also, that woman was very strong. She didn't buckle under pressure. But what happened? In the story, that one son becomes a dacoit. He takes to all criminal ways rather. Anyhow, we are not that. You see, all our movies and all, they are all based upon, the stories are based upon all our scriptures only. What lessons from the scriptures, they try to convert that into a movie story and present to us. When we see it in the movie, we appreciate. Oh, yeah, this is the consequence. So here also, we must try to appreciate it from the same standpoint. So when this intermixture of castes happen, when they get married to people, because their own caste, everybody has died, all Kshatriyas have died, isn't it? Kshatriyas are the one who will go for war. And they all die. So all Kshatriya women, they become totally, the families become headless. So when all of them have died, who are left in the society? The Brahmin male members who have not gone to the war, the Vaishya male members who have not gone to the war, Shudra male members who have not gone to the war. Only these three kinds of male members are left. Now, if the Kshatriya women want protection, they will have to get married to one of the other three castes. So that will create a Varna Sankaraha, intermixture of castes. That is how we have to understand. And when that happens, what will happen? Normally, ours being a patriarchal society, the family values of the males only are passed on to the future generations. So this woman's family values, the Kshatriya Dharma, Kshatriya Kula Dharmas, which she was following and which she is supposed to hand over to the next generation of the Kshatriyas, she will not be able to do it because now a different set of Kula Dharmas has come on stage. The children will be confused. Which dharma I should follow? Now I have got a father. Or forget it. Let us say that the women who are widowed, they don't marry. But their next generation, they have to marry. Next generation, there won't be any Kshatriyas because all the Kshatriyas are dead. And those, their mothers have, they probably would have, some of them would have succumbed to some pressures, societal pressures and all that. So anyhow, the point being made is the women will no longer be able to uphold the family values and pass it on to the next generation. And when the family values are destroyed, adharma will increase. And due to increase in adharma, there will be utter confusion in the society. Therefore, Arjuna's point is that the bitter consequence of this war was increase in adharma leading to a state of utter confusion in the society. This is his point. But we must understand one thing. This highlights one very fact glaringly in this verse, and that is the stature of women in our society. In fact, the entire edifice of the society during the Vedic times rested on women. And the process started from the women's role in the stability of the family. As we have seen, the stability of the family is very, very important for cultural growth, spiritual growth, and all that. And in fact, if you reflect our school days, what we have studied, what our previous generation has studied, almost 3-4 generations, last 200-300 years. If we have studied our history, what we have been taught? We have been taught only the history of our country for the last 1,000 years or so. The history of India from the invasion of Mahmud of Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori only has been taught to us, which was followed by the Mughal rule, which was followed by the British rule. All our history texts contain only these stories, these anecdotes. And we all think that that is our history. Nobody talks about the history before 1,000 years, what was the condition. And before 1,000 years, India as a society, as a glorious past, has existed for tens of thousands of years. Nobody, no history book talks about it, all those periods. We only talk of 1,000 years. So our mindset has really become sort of a, confused ourselves and corrupted, that when we look at our own selves, we are ashamed at our history. And in fact, if you look at the role of the women in the society, the women were playing stellar roles earlier. Before these invasions and plunder, of India by these Mughals and these invaders from across the mountains, and the British, who also came as traders and then settled down here to rule the country. India was a society with glorious traditions of Sanatana Dharma. In fact, I was just reading somewhere today that India before 1,000 years had something like more than 7 lakh gurukulams. Very, very big gurukulams where people used to go and study. Vedic, complete 12 years, 15 years, they used to spend in the gurukulams. Entire culture of the country, entire culture of the Sanatana Dharma was passed on in those gurukulams. And in that society, the women had a very grand role to play in all fields rather. They were held in very high esteem in our culture. And we have numerous examples of that. I mean, it's not just, for the sake of saying, I'm saying, just to take up history before 1,000 years, you will know what, the history of our country was rather. Such a glorious history. And if a narrative has developed of women being persecuted confined to the kitchen, etc., it is because of the culture of the invaders, in which the women were treated as slaves or as second-class citizens. In some of that Abrahamic cultures, these situations still prevails. Women are treated as slaves only in those cultures still. Even, a great British, supposed to be, all this democracy business and all that, when women got voting rights in Britain, they got their voting rights only in the beginning of the 20th century. This was the condition of women even in the biggest colonist, that is the British Empire. That was the condition of the women. Women had no rights. Whereas in our case, women were ruling kingdoms. They were fighting wars before 1,000 years. So the pathetic condition of women in many parts of our society today is the result of the domination of these foreign cultures in our society. That we must understand very, very clearly. And that is very, very important for retaining our self-esteem as Indians, as Sanatana Dharmis. Of course, thankfully, all that is changing now slowly rather. Women in India are slowly regaining their status, which they enjoyed before our culture. And the whole society is now functioning as a cohesive unit. There are checks and balances. Women now are, they have got the right to become permanent commissioned officers in the army. 30 years, 40 years ago, we could not have thought about it. Now, women, latest development, they can become officers. They are regaining their their role as fighters, as warriors. That is what is happening today. In today's society, women are regaining their original, their own, what I can call their role, their status in the society. They are slowly regaining. And of course, this current government is also very supportive of that. Because unless women play a stellar role in any society, that society will perish. This is granted. I mean, women are, without any doubt, you can take any history, especially Indian history, we have flourished only because of the strength of the women in the families. They were totally in charge of the families. And whenever the society has gone into, what I can say, total disarray, it is because the women's role has weakened in those societies. So, at the time of Mahabharata war, the women in our society were the guardians of the family traditions, culture, and had a significant role to play in the stability of the family. That we must understand. Why I am explaining all these things is that from where Arjuna is coming, that we need to understand. And as Puja Swamiji again points out, it was the women who protected the dharma in any society. And they in turn were protected by the men. And this was the societal condition at that time. So if all the men who had been recruited, trained and sent to battle, all the great kings, princes, soldiers, leaders, you have seen all of them, right? They are all destroyed and killed. The women would not be protected. And thus they would be unable to follow the dharma and thereby protect the dharma also. So Arjuna's contention is that dharma would be lost in the absence of the protection of a dharmi. And therefore, no one would be left to protect all the dharma that was handed over from one generation to the next. Again, we must understand, dharma is not a system with built-in lateral controls, It was a tradition. There was no central organization from which everything flowed down, such as it exists in some other religions like papacy, diocese, parish, and all. They were a structured way. This is how things have to be done. Here, the form was purely a structure handed over by a family. In our case, the parents passed it on to their children. So what Arjuna wants to say is a society is strong only when its women are strong. When the women themselves are given to certain weaknesses, to ways that are not becoming, then it will lead to confusion. If the family is destroyed, one's parentage becomes a problem and an enormous confusion is thereby created. So Arjuna is arguing from the standpoint of his society's social structure. And he is convinced that the confusion would not only be within the Varnas, but also in the Dharmas once the women could no longer maintain the Dharma. This is what he wants to say. And we know that a particular atmosphere is required to follow the Dharma. A certain discipline, a certain structure within the family is required. And in the absence of that order that governs a well-structured society, there is a risk that the women would be given to ways that were not proper. So, when the people who form the framework of a society's structure are destroyed, the structure itself will naturally be destroyed. So this is what is Arjuna's point. So now it's almost time. I will stop here because the next I want to explain also about a little more about this Kula Dharma, what these traditions, etc. Are there. Because, what Arjuna is trying to point out by saying Kula Dharma means every family has got a Dharma. There was a Dharma for marriage which states exactly how the marriage has to be done. In the performance of rituals, each family had its own sutras. Many of us belong to Apastamba Sutra, which we say when we Abhivade, we say Apastamba Sutras. So many sutras are there. So their own sutras and their traditions will be following from those sutras rather, and the methods that govern them. So in other words, there was a certain know-how which is within each family for leading a dharmic life. And these dharmas relating to different groups like Kula Dharma, Varna Dharma, Ashrama Dharma, all these things were all very, very important. Varna, of course, we all know means Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, etc., which we all discuss later. Ashrama refers to stages of life. Student stage, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, then Vanaprastha, Sannyasa, etc. All these had their own dharmas. All put together is what we will call a Kula Dharma or a Dharma of the society. So therefore, destruction of a male who was actually protecting all these people, these dharmis, is as good as a destruction of a family. And when families are destroyed, the consequences will be terrible. And Arjuna says, by destroying these people, we will be destroying countless families, and by that, so many evil consequences will happen. And these consequences, etena pashyanti, Duryodhanas do not see because of their greed. But hey Krishna, I now have got a clear vision. This is what Arjuna is saying. We will see more of this in the next class. Okay. I'll say the prayers. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Namaste, Guruji.
Mama.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Namaskaram.
Hari Om Guruji. Thank
Hari
you.
Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hari Om. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Guruji. I wanted to ask you about the Kuladharma, but you have said that you are going to take it next week. So
Yeah, I will explain more. I want to go a little more into this Kula Dharma, Varnashrama, because Varnashrama Dharma is also part of the Kula Dharma only, basically. So we have to, when we are looking at Dharma Nashte, when the Dharmas are destroyed, we must understand it in the complete perspective. How, and in fact, we have got very good example what is happening today. If we look around in our society, that is what is happening. But of course, that is not relevant from the Bhagavad Gita point of view. But that I want to go next class. I will deal with it little more, go a little deeper into Kula Dharma business.
okay, thank you.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raghuji. What a perspective, to look. I mean, the teachers,
Well,
what,
see, that's
and what a misconception. No. What I'm trying to tell,
See,
such a total misconception. The whole society is portrayed, the world is portraying India as the men control women.
Yeah.
Maybe superficially, maybe so, because we do see, I see, but the people who do that are ignorant people. They don't know what it is.
I wouldn't be ignorant. What has happened is this Varna Sankraha has happened, in the last 1,000 years. Because of this foreign influence, our thinking has also become like them only.
Yeah. See,
even today, when we go to, when I have spent 10 years in Kuwait, right, in an Arabic country, the women are treated like slaves and, like.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's pathetic rather.
My husband got a job in Saudi. The first thing they said, she cannot go out by herself. My husband, forget it. I don't want the money. He said, I don't want the money, So I can understand what I'm trying to tell you. It is so portrayed, even as you said, by the Western society, and people fall for the media. That's what I'm saying. And the only way they have to get out of this, read our scriptures. As you said, I am so that, like Okarandhaji said, nobody sees Ati Chudi. Nobody knows what is taught in schools in Tamil Nadu.
Exactly.
Even in our society, I learned, it is so true.
Correct. So
They know English rhymes.
We must not jump to any conclusions about Indian society by looking at what is happening now.
Yeah.
Our society's glorious treasure, tens and thousands of years tradition has been completely destroyed in the last 1,000 years.
I always tell this, that there is nothing wrong in learning English rhymes. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But you got to learn yours also.
Yeah.
How many? Yes. Exactly.
And this is all, as I tell you, it's a very big thing. Our histories have been written.
Since you started, I wanted to add some, because I've read, and maybe because with the Swamiji, Puji Swamiji and Paramananda from very early, I'm just open. My eyes have been open, so I'm able to analyze it, and I appreciate that you are able to reiterate what I've been thinking. That's all. Thank you, Raghuji. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really.
Hariji, yes. Can't hear you. Unmute.
Hari Om. See, we never had considered women to be inferior to men in our Shastra.
Yeah.
There is no Shaktiman without Shakti.
Shakti, correct. Parvati Parameshwara, Ardhanarishwara. That's it.
Yeah, Ardhanarishwara. There is no Shaktiman without Shakti.
Shakti, yeah.
It is Veda Mata.
Yes.
It is there is no Vishnu without Lakshmi.
Correct.
Yeah. So how at all this topic come that we have never treated women as inferior. On the contrary, we have treated always women one step ahead of men.
Absolutely. In our Vedic culture, in our Vedic literature and all, this women's status has always been acknowledged, and it has been that the superior status of women has always been acknowledged.
The question of discriminating between men and women is going against Vedanta, because the Veda says there is only one self.
Yeah, exactly.
It
It's
is,
going
it is
in-
there is no question of men or women. In
Correct.
that discrimination never existed in Vedanta.
Correct.
Whereas if you look at,
Yes, all of us have been told or been taught in schools and colleges about all this discrimination, patriarchal society, this society, that society, and all. And our mindset has become like that. And many of our children, they join all these. So this women's liberation movement, this movement, that movement. And all.
it is on the contrary. If you look at women, the women were paid less.
Yeah,
Women didn't have the voting right,
yeah.
which was never the case in India.
In the case, never the case in India, rather.
Yeah, so there is no question of comparing India with the Western.
Correct. Very true.
I have stayed in Europe for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
I've stayed in the Middle East for past 25 years.
Hmm.
I have not seen a society which is so equal for men and women, just like in India.
Correct. Very true.
So there is no need to compare India with the Western country. They have to learn from us.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very true.
Yeah. No Shakti, no Shaktiman without Shakti.
No Shaktiman without Shakti. Very true. And that's why, from whatever Arjuna is saying, we have to derive all these lessons with all these understandings. That what he is trying to say is, here by fighting this war, that women who is in the central role, we are putting that women at a big risk.
Yeah. And the fundamental principle, the fundamental value that the Vedanta is teaching is there is only one self. Whether it is men or women.
There is no men, women business and all that. There is self.
Yeah, it is not there at all.
That is true. Very true. True. Anyhow, we'll see more of this Kula Dharma business in the next class.
Yeah.
Because both Swamiji, especially Paramarthanandaji, has dealt with this quite detail. I want to share with you what I have got from Swami Paramarthananda. Puja Swamiji doesn't go into so much details. He covers it in a very broad way rather. But Paramarthanandaji's excellent talks are there. So that is why I want to share that with you. Of course, in my own little bit style. Thank you, Hari Om. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Any more questions? Any more hand raising? Otherwise, can we close the session with your permission?
Thank you, Guruji.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next Saturday. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, and Hari Om, Guruji.
Hari Om. Thank you.